So I get out and I start actually doing character animation. My first year out, if you remember, there was a company called Big Idea that did VeggieTales. Didn't get
Yeah.
to work. Didn't get to work there, but I worked for a guy who stole a contract from VeggieTales. So for the first year, I was basically doing like like a Bible school version of Winnie the Pooh, which sounds whatever it is. I worked with a ton of old school 2D Disney animators.
Yeah.
Amazing guys. And I basically got my master's, what is the equivalent of a master's degree for me. I'd show up early, like before class, before work, and basically sit down with one of the old 2D Disney animators, and he would teach me posing, timing, spacing, texture, how to do fine line, how to do cleanup, how to approach breakdowns versus keyframes. And then at lunch, he would give me an assignment, and I would sit with 2 or 3 of the other old guys at lunch, and we'd all just flip. He showed me like old school, like not Flash, not in TV Paint, like just rolling, like bottom of the pegs roll, top of the pegs roll. And I just absorbed all that. I was leading them. I was in charge of them because I knew 3D, but these guys are teaching me. So my bargain was, I'll teach you guys how to use 3D and After Effects if you show me how all these old school tricks.
Oh, that's awesome.
So it was awesome, but it also exposed me something that I think hopefully maybe we'll talk about a little bit. All these guys phased themselves out of the industry because about 6 months into them being here, they were told you have to start using Flash. You can't work on paper anymore. You can't scan your paper. We need to go faster. And to a person, all but 1 or 2 of them basically said, see you later. I spent my whole life learning how to do this tool. And instead of realizing how much they had in their heads and that they could be creative directors and that they understand intuitively, they understand motion, whether it's stop motion, live action, 2D, 3D, they knew it inherently. They threw it away because they were so focused on their tool. The pencil was the equivalent to 3D Studio Max or Cinema 4D or After Effects. And 6 months of uncomfortability, they would have turned into leads at Pixar, at Blue Sky, at DreamWorks. They could have gone and had the world, but they could not get over, no, this is my tool and you're telling me it's gone.
That's the thing, I was so like the old men, right? I was so scared to become a creative director because I felt like I've got to stop. I've got to stop everything I'm doing. I stop all the learning. I got to make sure I'm giving back to everybody else and not serving myself. And it's actually been the opposite. I've learned so much more in this teacher's mindset, mentor's mindset, way more than I originally thought. So, but I do still believe that being always relevant in the industry and always knowing what the tools are and having a familiarity with them, and the learning doesn't stop just because you want to become a creative director. I think the learning just begins, and I love that. And I love the day to day.
Yeah. I'm curious, Ryan. Definitely, I'm thinking about those men you talk about. What did you learn from them outside of just the crafts? What did you observe? Would you say there's anything you lifted from them leadership wise, or just the skills they brought or how they explained it? I'm just curious. It's so fascinating. And I'm laughing also that Flash was the new thing and now where's Flash? Right? So
it doesn't even exist.
That pushed them all out. And
exactly.
But I'm curious. When I think about that, what types of mentorship do they give you? At least if even in a small way.
That's a great point. I think they allowed me to work through this this chip on the shoulder that I had because I came from a world where south side of Chicago, you're not an art. There's no way to be an artist, right? Like an artist, a capital A artist. So I would say for the first 4 or 5 years I was working until I really met 2 or 3 of these people, I would tell people I worked on the computer. I wouldn't tell people I was an artist. I wouldn't even say I was an animator because I'm animating at a slot machine company. It's not really video games because it's not, Midway was right across the street and they made Mortal Kombat. Those guys made video games. But when I actually finally sat down and got to like get trained by these people and they looked to me as a mentor, but I was looking to them, there was this exchange. And I love the act of making a mark on a piece of paper, right? I love the idea of being able to, even with simple shapes, being able to create performance and tell stories. And I always, I loved comic books. I loved the panel to panel storytelling. But I always looked at myself as an imposter. Like I never was trained in those things. I almost looked at myself as like a very extreme version of a fanboy, like an otaku, like there's a lot of Japanese fans of animation that eventually do become animators, like Hideaki Anno, who did who started Gainax and created Evangelion. Like he was, like a super nerd for animation who then eventually became one of the best animators and then one of the best directors. I always felt that way. I was almost ashamed of the fact that like I love this stuff so much that I got to do it, but I never really allowed myself to call myself that. And I think once I finally gained their respect and they sat down and they showed me not just tricks, but also like the deep kind of methodology of living every day as an artist in terms of being humble, being open to the world, listening, constantly observing, right? If you ever meet 2D animators, even now, people who animate now, but especially old school 2D animators, they're always observing. If they can, they have a little pad of a pencil or and a pad of paper and their pencil, and they're drawing at lunch. They go to they go to the zoo and they draw. They're sitting at a baseball game and they're drawing the people around them. But if they don't have that, they're making mental images in their head of like, look at the way that person's sitting, and not just for the pose, but they're like, this person's mad. If I don't get to hear dialogue, how do I say that they're mad? And those lessons I tried to take into, well, that also applies to camera angles, that applies to colors, that applies to a square. You can make a square sad.
Yeah.
You know, they always have me do the flour sack kind of test of like, okay, take not a bouncing ball, take a sack, this lumpless thing, and show how through movement you can create emotion. And those things all stacked up over the course of 2 or 3 years, where I finally felt comfortable feeling like I earned my stripes, that I'm an artist. If I can pick up a pencil and create a story or give direction or create magic and wonder through a pencil, then I think that must be what an artist is. And I'm not the best. I never will be the best, because I think I just tweeted about this today, because I accidentally posted a new version of my demo reel. I was just updating it for work so they can, use my demo reel. And I didn't know that Vimeo will actually automatically post it to Twitter. Thanks, Vimeo.
Oh, no.
But then it went out and people were like asking questions and commenting on it. And it had a lot of old work, but it had some of my more recent work in there, just for the studio to help like promote like the fact that I'm at the studio. And I feel like it was the first time in 20 plus years that I finally reconciled the fact that I don't have a style. Right. As a creative director, I've always felt like an imposter, because I look up at like, I worked at the House of Kyle Cooper, right? Imaginary Forces. I sat alongside Karen Fong. I worked for Michelle Doherty. But I look at people like Glenn Keane, who I was lucky enough to interview, last year. Those people are masters, and they have spent a lifetime generating a style, a vibe, a feel, a voice. I say voice and vision a lot, because I've been searching for mine for 20 years. And I finally looked at my demo reel and I was like, oh, you know what? I don't have a style, but because I'm a creative director working in motion design, that is my style. That is my calling card. My calling card isn't a look. My calling card is, I love certain things. I love certain types of timings. I love certain types of emotions. I love certain types of colors, but it doesn't come out in each one piece. You have to see it all together to be like, well, this is actually what motion design is. Motion design isn't film and TV animation. Motion graphics or motion design is the fact that we work with all styles, and we embrace. If you work at a shop and you do motion design as a creative director, you have to equally love live action, 2D animation, cell animation, photography, typography, technology, writing, drawing, talking. You have to love all of those things to lead a team and lead clients, right? And it's taken me 20 plus years, and accidentally posting my demo reel at 4 o'clock in the morning and looking at it and being like, oh, that's right. I actually finally now feel comfortable enough to say, like, I think I'm a creative director working in motion design, and that's okay.
Yep.
Wow. That makes a lot of, that's hilarious. Sometimes the universe gives us these little things, right? To remind us. Yeah, and the reel's great, by the way.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, but that's great. I mean, and I think the reason I asked the question, we talk a lot about that on this channel, and we have, it's a theme throughout all the videos, but there are mentorship opportunities everywhere. We always talk about teachable moments, and when people ask us, even a designer or a young creative, I say young in the time, not age, but they're coming up in their craft. What are the things they need to know? And sometimes, people will come to me, and Corey, we talk about this too, of talking about the stuff you said, like the tools, the thing, getting overwhelmed with what you just described of who am I? What's my look? What the function of the job, right? And it's important, but they're forgetting about these other pieces. So that's why I asked the question of, what did they bring to you? What did you learn? And it was great to hear about the mentorship, because, they're both important, right? They both really matter in like the whole journey of us coming up, because as you said, even listening to your journey, it's so different than mine for sure, and that's what's complementary. It's so great to hear. Yeah.